The desert wind howled across the amber sands of Korath Prime, carrying with it the metallic scent of blood and ozone. Marcus Kane knelt in the dust, his hands bound behind his back with energy cords that hummed with barely contained power. Above him, the twin suns cast harsh shadows across the barren wasteland, and before him stood the galaxy's most feared bounty hunter. Valera was her name, whispered in terror across 1,000 worlds. She was Caltherin, a species bred for war and perfected through centuries of genetic refinement. 7 feet of corded muscle, scales like polished obsidian, and eyes that glowed with an amber intensity that could freeze prey in their tracks. Her reputation preceded her like a shockwave. 300 confirmed kills. Never failed a contract. Never showed mercy. The blade at Marcus's throat was forged from compressed star metal, sharp enough to split atoms. It caught the sunlight and threw dancing reflections across the sand. Valera's 4-fingered hand held it steady, the point dimpling the skin just above his jugular. Final words, human? Her voice was a deep rumble, like distant thunder rolling across mountains. The universal translator embedded in her jaw converted her native clicking and hissing into comprehensible speech. Marcus smiled. Blood from a split lip stained his teeth red. Yeah, your grip is weak. Valera's eyes narrowed. Confusion flickered across her reptilian features. In all her years, across all the species she had hunted, none had ever spoken such words while staring down their own death. Defiance, yes. Begging, certainly. Silence, often. But this casual dismissal of her prowess was something entirely new. You mock death itself, she said, pressing the blade closer. A thin line of crimson appeared where metal met flesh. You mock me. No mockery, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the weapon at his throat. Just an observation. You rely on fear, on reputation, on the natural advantage your species has over most others. But you have forgotten the first rule of combat. And what rule is that, pray? Never assume victory before your enemy stops breathing. The words had barely left his mouth when Marcus moved. His body twisted with speed that defied logic, muscles coiling and releasing like compressed springs. The energy cords binding his wrists snapped against a jagged rock he had been slowly sawing against for the past 10 minutes, while Valera delivered her traditional pre-execution monologue. She liked to savor her kills, to let her targets understand the futility of their situation. It was her only weakness, and Marcus had studied every recording of her hunts he could find. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced, not blessed with natural armor or weapons. What they possessed was something far more dangerous: adaptability forged in the crucible of a death world. Earth had tried to kill humanity for millions of years through predators, plagues, ice ages, and competitors. Each challenge had only refined them further. Marcus's hand shot up and caught Valera's wrist, thumb pressing hard into the nerve cluster he had identified during their brief struggle hours earlier. The Caltherin anatomy was well documented in human military databases. Her grip faltered for just a fraction of a second. It was enough. He rolled backward, pulling her off balance. She was stronger, yes, but strength meant nothing without proper leverage. Marcus had learned to grapple on the wrestling mats of his academy against opponents who outweighed him by 50 pounds. Valera outweighed him by 200, but the principles remained the same. The sword clattered to the sand. They tumbled together in a cloud of dust. All pretense of predator and prey dissolved into a desperate struggle for survival. Valera's claws raked across Marcus's armor, finding gaps, drawing blood. But he was inside her guard now, too close for her to use her reach advantage. His elbow found her solar plexus, such as it was on Caltherin physiology. Air rushed from her lungs with a surprised hiss. Impossible, she gasped. trying to create distance. Humans are weak, soft, fragile. Marcus drove his knee into her midsection and felt something crack. "We are," he agreed, breathing hard. "Compared to you, we break easy. But we have something you apex predators never developed. We remember that anything can kill us, so we learn to kill anything." They separated, both rising to their feet in defensive stances. Blood dripped from wounds on both combatants. Valera's amber eyes now held something they rarely contained: uncertainty. "You were contracted to bring me in," Marcus said, circling slowly. "Dead or alive, the bounty's the same. But you always choose dead because it is easier. Because you can. Because you have never faced something that truly challenged you." "You know nothing of challenge, human," Valera snarled. But her voice carried less conviction than before. "I know that my species climbed from the bottom of the food chain to the top. We were not born apex predators like the Calthrans or the Vrex or the Mordian Crushers. We were prey animals who got clever, got mean, and got even." Marcus picked up the star metal sword from where it had fallen. The weight was unfamiliar in his hand, balanced for Valera's physiology rather than his own, but a weapon was a weapon. "We hunted megafauna to extinction with nothing but rocks and pointy sticks. We crossed oceans in wooden boats to find new lands to conquer. We split the atom and touched the face of our sun. Every single one of those achievements came because we refused to accept the limitations the universe placed on us." Valera lunged. Her speed was impressive, covering the distance between them in a blur of motion. But Marcus had been waiting for it. He sidestepped, let her momentum carry her past, and brought the pommel of the sword down hard on the base of her skull. The impact rang like a bell. She stumbled, turned, swept his legs out from under him with her tail. He hit the ground hard enough to see stars. Her foot came down toward his chest, razor claws extended. He rolled, felt them tear furrows in the sand where his body had been a heartbeat before. This was the truth of combat that civilized species often forgot. It was not about honor or fair play or following rules. It was about who wanted to survive more, who was willing to dig deeper, fight dirtier, endure longer. Humans had learned this lesson well, because their homeworld had been a merciless teacher. Marcus swung the sword in a wide arc that forced Valera to leap back. He used the moment to regain his feet, lungs burning, vision swimming from blood loss and exhaustion. Every wound he had accumulated over the past 3 days of pursuit was screaming at him to stop, to give in, to accept the inevitable. He ignored them all. "You want to know why the Galactic Council fears humanity?" Marcus asked, pressing his advantage. "Not because we are strong. Because we refuse to quit. Because when you knock us down, we get back up. And when we cannot get up, we fight from our knees. And when our knees fail, we fight from our backs. We do not surrender." Valera blocked a strike, countered with a claw swipe that opened a gash across his shoulder. "Pretty words. But you are bleeding out, human. I can wait, so can I." They clashed again, blade against claw, determination against superiority. The twin suns tracked slowly across the sky, indifferent witnesses to the struggle below. Time lost meaning. There was only the next strike, the next block, the next desperate attempt to find an opening. Marcus fainted high, went low, and drove the sword through Valera's thigh. She roared, a sound that echoed across the empty desert like the cry of some ancient beast. Her fist caught him in the ribs with enough force to crack bone. He flew backward, landed in a heap, tasted blood. "Get up." The command came from somewhere deep in his hindbrain, the part that still remembered running from predators across African savannas, the part that had driven his ancestors to impossible victories against impossible odds. "Get up, get up, get up." Marcus stood. Somehow, impossibly, he stood. Valera was on one knee, pulling the sword from her leg with a grimace of pain. Green blood stained the sand around her. She looked up at Marcus, and in her eyes he saw something shift. Recognition, understanding, perhaps even respect. "You fight well, human," she said quietly. "Better than any I have faced." "Thank you," Marcus replied. "That means something coming from you. The contract on your head is substantial. But I begin to wonder if perhaps it is not worth the price." Valera stood, favoring her wounded leg. "You stole military secrets from the Vrex Imperium. Information that could tip the balance of power in 3 sectors." "I stole evidence of war crimes," Marcus corrected. "There is a difference. To some, perhaps." Valera retrieved her sword, but she did not raise it. "I was told you would be easy prey. A soft human with delusions of importance. I see now that intelligence was flawed. What happens now?" The Caltheran hunter was silent for a long moment, weighing options, calculating probabilities. Finally, she sheathed her blade. "Now I report that my target was killed in the pursuit. An explosion, perhaps. Very thorough. No body recovered." Marcus stared. "Why?" "Because you were right, human. My grip was weak. I relied on advantages I was born with rather than skills I earned. You have taught me a valuable lesson today." Valera turned to leave, then paused. "Also, because the galaxy needs more beings willing to expose the truth, regardless of the cost. Even if they are annoying, stubborn humans." She limped toward her ship, leaving Marcus alone in the desert with his wounds and his victory. As her vessel lifted off in a cloud of dust and fire,